Welcome back, all my 40K fanatics out there, and a special shout out to all the cronies for, well, all the wonderful conversations about Necron Warriors. Recently, Necron Warriors dropped to 11 points, and with the lifting of Armor of Contempt, it looks like these guys might be fieldable again. We're looking at armies and armies of Necron Warriors being able to control the meta and dominate the table. Or are we? Remember, there was a time when we did this. And as the damage output increased from new codexes and new books, it meant that Necron Warriors just couldn't sustain long enough to be able to trigger reanimation rules. That being said, it's not just Necrons that go in, or Necron Warriors that go into the list to make this happen. So is there enough there to make Necron Warriors a dominant force in the Necron army once again? I'm DJ Timms. That topic and a couple others is one that I'd like to talk to you guys about today. In the description below, I will link a couple of timestamps on the things I want to cover, and my plan is to break this video into 3 parts. Part number 1 is going to be just a basic understanding of what Necrons can do, the stratagems that they can use, their stat lines, etc. If you're a veteran Necron player and don't really want to see that, you can skip to part 2, where part 2 is where I'm going to start talking about the table tactics and what you can do on the table with them. Love to hear some discussions and some opinions, because this is how we're going to make all the dynasties run again. This is how we build our armies. This is how we make decisions as a community. And so far, the Necron community has been excellent with advice, helping people out, and some very nice people that I've met along the way, even if it is just over social media. The third part is going to be a special part per se, where I'm going to show the army I plan on running for a little bit. Now, with all the Necron Warriors being out there, we're going to see quite a few videos and see what these guys can do. For me, I'm running without any Necron Warriors at all, and running a little bit different than what people are usually doing. Why? 2 reasons. 1, for all the gamers that were such as myself that might not be able to get as many games in a week, here's an opportunity for me to show you some stuff on the table that you might have wanted to try, but don't have the time to. And when you get the time for a game or get to go to a tournament, you'd rather run what's reliable and what's working over taking a risk and finding out, well, that didn't work. I'm looking at you, Canoptic Doomstalkers. With that being said, we're going to get ready to jump over into what Necron Warriors are. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do, and please turn on the bell for notifications so you can get updates on other videos that I post like this as topics come about for other Necron units so we can start a discussion. By no means is my word law, but I've had much competitive success over the last editions, especially as of recently with Necrons, with a lot of top finishes at many respectable grand tournaments. So I want to share my knowledge with everybody, and I also want to grow myself. I will take criticism. I will take any type of advice that's given as long as it's given politely and respectfully. Again, please subscribe, like, share this video, and let's get over into what are Necron Warriors. So Necron Warriors, well, they basically look like a Marine in a lot of ways, except they don't have 2 wounds, and they have a 4-up save. Their weapon skill and ballistic skill are comparable to a Marine with a 3-up, and their strength and toughness 4 is in that same category. Their leadership 10 can be huge, especially when losing quite a few guys out of a Necron Warrior squad might cost you a leadership and losing quite a bit more. These guys have 2 choices of guns, the Gauze Flayer and the Gauze Reaper, and I am not opening that can of worm over which one is better. You decide in the situation which applies best for your army. One of which, the Gauze Flayer, is a 24-inch range, rapid-fire 1 weapon. The other is a Gauze Reaper, which is a 12-inch range, assault 2 weapon. With that being said, the short range and assault means that you can advance and shoot it at a -1 penalty, where the Gauze Flayer gives you a little bit of extra range. I think that both have a general role depending on what you want your army to do or what you want that unit to do. Nextly, the Gauze Flayer is a Strength 4 AP 1 for 1 damage, while the Gauze Reaper is Strength 5 -2 for 1 damage. So the Gauze Reaper at close range would have a significantly better damage output just on stats alone. But again, you have to get very close, and with one attack apiece, these guys are not going to hold up very well against most armies on the charge when it all comes about. So, which one do you take and when? For me, I like to take the Gauze Reaper, the short range gun, when coming out of a Ghost Arc, and the Gauze Flayers on board to lay long range support. With that being said, Necron Warriors dropped to 11 points apiece. This means that a 10-man squad will now cost you 110 points, where a 20-man will cost you 220 points. While those points don't seem so bad, one of the concerns that I've had in the previous edition is the fact that the Necron Warriors themselves, yes, they're good, but they do require support. The Necron Warriors are the only unit in the army to have an ability for reanimation protocol that allows them to re-roll the ones when rolling a reanimation roll. This means that when you have a reanimator, the Canoptic reanimator, targeting them, or you use a resurrection orb of any type, they can re-roll those ones. So this can be really good. But when you start saying resurrection orb, Canoptic reanimator, and those things, you have to realize those points are being accumulated into this total to make this run. And if all the warriors get destroyed and you lose the whole squad, you don't get any reanimation rolls. And if you don't get any reanimation rolls, all of the resources that you've spent into keeping these guys alive and to reanimating them suddenly become resources wasted. So how do you not waste those? You take more warriors. You take another 20-man. With the warriors costing significantly less, I think that's what gives them the hope of being able to take two 20-mans for 440 points. That's not bad. That's not even a quarter of a competitive 2,000-point army. But the Ghost Arc. Well, the Ghost Arc was significantly more expensive, now dropping down to 115 points. I think that it's a lot more feasible. And a lot of the roles that the Ghost Arc can fill inside of an army allow the Necron Warrior army build to be actually a lot more tactical than it may seem, which goes back into what is the meta going to shape up with these guys. I think that the Necron Warrior build will be good, but it's going to need to be piloted. You're going to need to spend a lot of time with it because there's going to be a lot of calls that you're going to need to make. The units are relatively fragile, as is, with a toughness 4 and a 4-up save, but they have the ability to keep coming back and resurrecting if you can play them well and protect them well and mitigate the targets that they're going into. And that's some of the stuff we'll look at when we get over on the table. One other thing to know with the Necron Warriors, to note about them, is access to stratagems. They do have a lot of stratagems that they can use. What's very nice about the stratagems that they can use is a lot of them are situational in a sense that you can find a situation in a game, but you don't need to use them on all situations. Some of the examples are sixes to hit, automatically wound. Well, shooting at a large toughness 8 vehicle, you may not want to shoot your Gauze Flayers and then roll the wound, so that can push a couple of shots through right to the armor save. Sixes to hit, generate additional hit. If you're running the Silent King, you can do what's called fishing for sixes, and since the Silent King says you can re-roll any to hit rolls, you can pick up everything that was even a hit that's just not a 6 and roll it, and in the end of it, if you're hitting on 2s from My Will Be Done, you're going to net more than you miss. So there's a lot of good stratagems. They have a lot of good army support. I mean, realistically, the army is designed around these guys. This is the closest that we have to playing undead in the 41st millennium. So there is a lot to be said about just the all-around class and aesthetics that having a bunch of Necron Warriors on the table really does for an army. Before I move over to the table, there is one little caveat I'd like to bring up with this, because I witnessed this recently at a tournament where someone was running an Overlord with a Resurrection Orb and had a Technomancer nearby to heal. Remember that all those abilities trigger in the command phase, and by you being the controlling player, you can pick what order they resolve in. Always, 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 if you think you're going to use your Resurrection Orb or Orb of Eternity, use it first. Take as many of the guys as you have that are gone, roll the dice for them, and then go into the Technomancer or your Command Barge to repair D3. Both those units are locked to how many they can repair, where the more dice you can throw towards an orb, the better results you have. So we've covered the basics of what a Necron Warrior is. Now it turns around into, what does a Necron Warrior do? What can we do with this on the table? And what are some tricks and tactics that you can bring to help make this happen? What is a Necron Warrior? Well, Necron Warriors are the basic foot troops of the Necron army. They share a battlefield role with only one other unit, and that's the Necron Immortals. These guys have the unique ability that when they're rolling reanimation protocol rolls, they can re-roll dice of 1. So any of your 1s, you get a second chance. Their stat line is very similar to that of a Marine, said for the fact that they are only 1 wound with a 4-up save, as opposed to the Marine power armor of a 3-up save and the 2 wounds. Necron Warriors have a leadership characteristic of 10, which will help when you start losing some guys and have to test morale. Side note, when testing morale at the end of the phase, any units that were reanimated do not count against you for testing morale. It is directly in the codex, but in case you were wondering and did not know, you do not have to take a penalty for models that ended up coming back on the field, only the ones that were removed that turn. Necron Warriors have access to 2 guns, which has been an argued debate on which one's better time and time again, Gauze Flayers and the Gauze Reaper. Honestly, depends on what your situation is. The Gauze Flare being a rapid-fire weapon at 24-inch range, strength 4, -1/1 damage, can be good for long-range suppressive fire. It also has access to some very nice strats as well. And the Gauze Reaper is strength 5, -2, 1 damage, but only a 12-inch range with the assault keyword, meaning these guys can advance and shoot this weapon. I think both weapons are very good. And I think if you're running a Necron Warrior full-on build, you're going to have both weapons in your army in some capacity. The Necron Warriors do have access to a lot of stratagems, and so be it, they should. They are infantry, they are core, they are the cornerstone of this army. Anytime you Google search or look in a book, you will end up seeing Necron Warriors all over the place. They've been with this army since 3rd edition, back when they were pewter metal guys, and very expensive to build and very heavy to transport. Nowadays, they're plastic. They can go all the way up to 20 mans, and for a while, Games Workshop sold them in 12. Hot dogs and hamburgers, I don't understand why. Now, the Necron Warriors have a lot of support within the army, and this is one of the concerns that I have, is although these guys have dropped to 11 points, making them 220 points for a 20-man, you still have to spend points on some of the support. Now, the positive is their support over time has dropped as well. Technomancers, Overlords, Resurrection Orb, and now, as of recent, the Ghost Arc. With that being said, that might be enough to push these guys over and to be competitive again. Is this going to be a competitive auto-take army? I don't think so. I think this is going to be something that is going to really reward the person who invests the time into it, because you are playing an infantry-based army. In a lot of ways, you're going to be playing Necrons the way that maybe Necrons was intended to be played, with a lot of warriors, a lot of infantry, and a lot of undead foot troops walking and marching across the board. These guys are very nice to see, a bulking of them on the field. It looks great. Some of the utility, such as the Ghost Arc, looks really nice alongside of them. And the Ghost Arc has a lot of great abilities that it can use, with its quantum shielding to ignore any damage, any to wound rolls of 1, 2, or 3, to its invuln that is a 5-up, and for 1 CP can become a 4-up. A lot of defense, a lot of resilience with these guys, as well as the fact that if you put these guys near the king and want to spend 1 command point, you can choose to fish for 6s, which means you pick up even the dice that hit, re-roll them, and go for 6s to generate additional hits, or automatically wound with stratagem backing. So that's the basic of on what Necron Warriors are. They're our foot troop, pretty generic. But what do they do on the table? Well, let's move over there and I can show you some of the tricks and tactics that you can bring to your competitive or casual game because, again, these are the cornerstone of your army, even in casual play. This stuff will work out very well and give you the maximum support out of your Necron Warriors. So, taking a minute and I've set the Necron Warriors up here on the table using the 2-inch coherency between them. This is a massive footprint. This is what 20 guys can do. 220 points of your army can pretty much cover your entire deployment zone. And if you're on a table quarter, it can cover most of it. It can protect from deep strike. It can prevent units from entering from strategic, which we're going to see a lot more of. And this can really, really give you coverage so you don't have to dedicate too much of your army. These guys cover a lot of ground that way. And it doesn't hurt the reanimation to be separated like this. You can pull the models as you wish and make sure that you have the models in the right position that you want. With that being said, you can also put them back in the position that you want. And that's the first thing I want to cover with you guys. When resurrection orbs as well as the barge trigger for their ability. So your opponent's turn, he shoots, you got to here. This is where your ending movement was, and you could not quite get to that objective marker. Your opponent shoots at you and shoots down, we'll just say this back row of guys, takes out these 6 guys, and you go to resurrect. Well, there's a couple things you can do. One, you can start your chain. You could start by putting, let's say you were even further away. Now you can start with, okay, I lost these guys, but hey, I brought 3 back. So we're going to put these 3 up here, almost to the objective. Now, during my command phase, Mr. Ghost Ark, who is nearby, is going to repair D3. He's going to get 1. But that's all we need, because this 1 goes right back here in coherency, and now we take that objective. But objectives are scored at the beginning of the turn. That's a common misconception. If you look at when primary objectives are scored, they're actually scored at the end of the command phase. These effects, same as Technomancer as well as Resurrection Orb, all trigger at the during your command phase. You can pick when they resolve. The only thing that has to resolve at the end of your command phase is when you score primaries or abilities that say so. This means that now in this situation, your opponent blew up some of your Necron Warriors, but gave you 4 points, maybe gave you the 12 for the turn as you're able to inch your way forward on these objectives. This is a very important tactic with the Necron Warriors and was one of their most powerful abilities to be able to use reanimation to make it this distance across the field. Speaking of distances across the field, we're going to look at the Ghost Ark. So the Ghost Ark is a vehicle, and it can move and transport units. In this scenario, the Ghost Ark is going to start the game right here. And for a normal Necron Warrior squad to move from our beginning of our deployment zone, this is going to be the representation of their 6-inch move. I'm sorry, of their move, their 5-inch move. They have a 5-inch move base. We got a Lord nearby. He's given us +1 to move. This is a 6-inch marker, so it'll make it more visually easier. So that's where the warrior ends up. Short for the objective marker. His 6-inch move will put him right there, and you're not able to get that objective. That's where this Ghost Ark comes in. So now we're going to deploy this Ghost Ark right on the line. The Ghost Ark says that you measure from the hull or the base, whichever is closer. It is also a transport vehicle, which means that it has the guys inside. So we got a 10-man squad of Necron Warriors in this thing. They're going to disembark at the beginning of my turn before this moves. Well, you disembark wholly within 3 of the vehicle. This, from the hull of the vehicle, is where the 3-inch mark goes. So now the Necron Warriors getting out, which will be represented by this guy, are getting out right there, and then can move their regular move. Assuming, again, we have the march effect in play. There's your 6-inch mark from base front. Now you are on that objective marker. If you wish to, you can advance out of the transport if you have the Gauze Reapers, which were assault weapons, and that's the role I like to see the Gauze Reapers in. I really believe that taking 10 warriors with Gauze Reaper coming out of a transport is a lot of fun. For a while, I was testing a build where I had 2 Ghost Arcs and 2 10-mans that had the Reapers coming out, and it was a very, very fun and unique concept where I was able to hit an objective, fall back, hit an objective, fall back, and keep bouncing back and forth with the Ghost Arcs and fixing guys and getting them in there. And even though a 10-man seems very, very weak, you have to remember your opponent has to dedicate resources to take them out. If you have other things that are going into them, they're not going to have the resources to hit those 10 men, and maybe they hit them with a 5-man squad of Space Marines with their bolters and they shoot down a couple of them. Well, you can reanimate some of them back just on regular reanimation protocols and then bring them back with the Ghost Arc and just overwhelm those Marine units with the fact that you're not going away. So this is a nice little way to be able to give you the speed to get across the field and tricks that you can do. Remember the 3-inch when disembarking from a Ghost Arc. It's critical. At the same time, remember your distances within these guys, the 2 inches, and how much they can actually cover. On top of it, understanding your reanimation protocols. Reanimation protocols is a very, very tricky, yet very good ability that allows you to do a lot of manipulations in the game for your advantage. Nothing is more shock and awestruck when you start reanimating models as they're shooting at you and you start moving closer and closer to that objective. Suddenly that Tau player looks at that unit that they were trying to destroy and thinks, do I want to shoot at it anymore? And I've had that scenario, and it's a great scenario to make your opponent stop shooting at you because you're inching closer to an objective that you're about to steal. Don't be afraid if you're going to fail a morale check. If you fail a morale check, you still have to roll through a bunch of dice, and usually losing the entire squad to morale and not having one model remaining is rare enough that you can push forward. And in Necrons, with a Resurrection Orb nearby, 1 model is as good as basically 16 because you're going to bring a lot of them back, especially with Technos and Ghost Arcs floating around the field. The last little piece I want to cover is dealing with how these guys interact with terrain. So they're infantry, which means that they can move through walls, basically. Runes and obscuring terrain, if it has the breachable effect, they can go through it. So one thing that is difficult is with the Canoptic Reanimator. I'm going to use the Ghost Arc in this example because it's also a model that falls into the same category with the other guys, with the Reanimators and other things that can do reanimation. So for argument's sake, this is our rune. Now, we don't want our Ghost Arc to get shot at. And by putting it behind this wall, it gets the obscuring terrain trait, and it's out of line of sight and can't get blocked. There, it can't get shot. But we want to be able to heal our warriors. But we want to be able to cover this objective. How do we do all 3? Well, with 1 model inside the building. Now, that model inside the building means that he can be shot at if he can be seen, and he can shoot out as well. But this guy can still not be seen. So what you do is you daisy chain. Place a warrior back, place the warrior back, and if you need a 6-inch effect, here's our 6-inch bubble off the side of it. Here is our 2-inch off the side of these. And now we have gone all the way to the wall with our warriors. And now the rest of them, I'm just going to poker chip these guys, can sit all right here on that objective and cover this and just be a big pocket of robo skeletons for your opponent to have to drill through. And until these 3 leave, you have your Ghost Arc or Reanimator protected behind a wall where he can't be seen, but is still able to target and give effects to the rest of your Necron Warriors in there. This is how I ran my Canoptic Reanimator for a while, but unfortunately, I didn't really like how many points were dedicated into it, as well as the fact that, again, resources into making Warriors work when the firepower has increased so much. That's my biggest concern with these guys right now. Is the firepower in the game still too much to make Necron Warriors work? So I'm testing the opposite theory. I'm going without any Necron Warriors and trying a different list or away from some of the Necolic or Mephrit builds that I've seen on the internet. I'm not trying to argue and say people are wrong. Warriors can't work. They're not going to win. That's not what they're going to do. I just have my reserves that I believe that there might not be as much durability behind them. I think that this could be a very strong and tactical army. I think it's going to take a lot of reps to really get it moving and get going efficiently. I think that a casual player could pick this up and enjoy it a lot because it uses a lot of Necron Warriors and a lot of reanimation, a lot of resurrection, and really what draws most people to Necrons. This is very thematic, and it would be very good to see all this stuff on the table. However, I personally want to test something else. I like to try to run off the meta, and as well at the same time, we're going to see a lot of Necron Warrior armies on stream, on YouTube, all over the place. Why not bring something a little different? Because I know a lot of people are thinking about it and maybe don't have the time to get that game. So why don't we take a look at what I'm going to be bringing this week with my Novak Dynasty. All right, here's a little teaser this week, what I'm going to be bringing out of my Novak Dynasty. I'm going to leave it here. It might be a little difficult to see. Later this week, when I take on Lane and his Votann, you'll get to see the full layout of what I'm working with here. So, in an effort to not make this video too long, this is a Novak Dynasty. I'm basing off the fact that now with our Armor of Contempt going away, I can get AP1 a little bit better on some things like Scarabs. That actually matters. As well as the fact that I don't have to take any troops, Necron Warriors or Immortals, and can really load out in a Canoptic regime. I'm calling this the Canoptic Harvest, since I am running double C10 and one of them is Nightbringer. And if it isn't a Chronomancer, Technomancer, C10, or the Overlord, it's a Canoptic unit. With that being said, right hip here in the front, I have 3 9-man squads of Canoptic Scarabs. Over here, I got these bad boys, these old school Tomb Spiders. I'm going to run 3 of those for this game. They are having particle beamers. So you look at 36 shots for the squad, 12 guys apiece at strength 5, AP 0, 1 damage. I have an additional spider back there just to help with some Scarab resurrections. I have 2 Wraith units. Apologize that some of them aren't painted. I'll have them painted tomorrow. Over here, we have a 5-man of Wraiths with the Wraith Claws, so the 2 damage weapons, strength 6 because they're +2, -2, 2 damage. And then over here, I'm taking a 4-man of all Whip Coils. With the Novak Dynasty being able to give the +1 attack, that can take these guys up to 5 attacks apiece, which means each model would have 10 attacks with all the boosted Novak strats of additional AP and additional strength. Going over to my characters, I did take a Necron Overlord. I do like the Necron Overlord. I like that he has a 4-up invuln that keeps him alive better. And I had the points. I just, in general, like having, I feel comfortable having him around. He will technically have to be my Warlord, but he's not going to have a Warlord trait. And he does have a Resurrection Orb. He does not have the Orb of Eternity, just a regular Resurrection Orb. Also in this list, I decided to take him as a Ferion, which means he can do my Will Be Done twice, to both of the Wraith squads, maybe the Spiders if need be, but more or less to follow the Wraiths is the initial plan. On his left and right, on the ends, are 2 Chronomancers. Being able to give 5-up invuln to the Scarabs, on top of the 4-up of the Wraiths, makes my army very durable and very equipped to deal with some of the higher AP and be able to push back. 5-up invuln Scarabs are really strong. Anyone who's ever used them can probably atone for that. they're really tough to get by. Directly next to him is my single Technomancer. He will have my Warlord trait. He has the +3 to his auras. He's got a Canoptic control node, a failsafe overcharger, and the Veil of Darkness. So he's dishing out an additional attack to a Canoptic unit, or D3 if it's a monster or vehicle, the spiders. He is able to give +1 to hit to Canoptic units within 9 inches because of the +3 boost to his control node, and a Veil to pick up spiders, wraiths, and teleport over the field. I feel like for one command point, the Veil is a never leave home item just for how good it is. In the backfield, I decided to go with the biggest of the big boys, the Void Dragon and the Nightbringer. Yes, I know I could have taken the Tezzeret Vault. It's technically the biggest of the big boys, but these are the biggest of the big boys that are actually not vehicles, that are the boys. They're not a battery to a flying fortress of death. You got the Void Dragon. He's going to have Sky of Falling Stars. The Nightbringer is most likely going to spend a command point at the beginning of the battle round to be able to switch over to Sky of Falling Stars, that being the only way that you can get to Sky of Falling Stars. Initially, I haven't really decided his second power because I'm really set on having double Sky of Falling Stars. All in all, this is the build I'm looking to do. My theory behind this is Purge the Vermin causes us to be more aggressive, to push people out of our deployment zone, so I want an aggressive assault build that's fast. Treasure of Aeons wants us to hold the objectives and beyond them to score the points, so I want to be able to clear units off the objectives, take them, and score the points on that. Ancient Machineries, I have a ton of Canoptic units that can try and score it. Granted, it won't finish till the beginning of my command phase, but still a lot of Canoptic units that can do it. Lastly, the game, as many people have said, and I agree with this as well, you play the game on objectives. If you can't play on the objective and you're playing in the middle of no man's land, you're giving your opponent an advantage by drawing big units away into the corner. You want to try and play on the objectives as much as you possibly can with the units that you can survive with them. All of these units have the ability to have high invulns, high wound count, and really tough to move. Also, there is a 1 command point strat that lets me heroic intervention with the Canoptic unit. I plan on utilizing that a lot for people who may try to toe in, which is barely touch, an objective marker and steal it from me without engaging me. I can then spend a command point and say, no, 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 you're fighting my wraiths. Well, that's all I got for you guys right now today. Please leave a comment below and let me know if there's anything else you'd like to talk about with Warriors or talk about list designs. You can find me on Facebook and send me messages. I'd love to start talking lists and going over with people. Please, again, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, do so. And I will be talking to you guys again soon. A lot of good stuff in the future, especially 2 games this week. Thank you again.